All right, we will get started shortly.
Kelly,
Yep.
can you?
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining our briefing on the City of Philadelphia's response to COVID-19. Today, all speakers are joining the briefing virtually to adhere to social distancing guidelines. We will begin our briefing today with opening remarks from Mayor Jim Kenney. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thanks, Kelly, and good afternoon, everybody. Today, I want to start by giving everyone an update on the trash and recycling situation. I know it's been real difficult for a few weeks for our workers and for our residents. But thanks to the measures we put in place, we are getting back on track. Currently, we are 1 day behind citywide, and in some neighborhoods, we're completely caught up. We'll continue to work over the weekend, and we hope to be on a normal schedule all of next week. Please continue to set out your trash and recycling on your regular day as neat as possible. The Streets Department continues to make progress on hiring temporary workers to help with staffing issues. 55 new laborers have been hired so far, with another 22 cleared to start this week. I also want to thank the employees who have been working in sanitation from other departments to help get us through our backlog. It truly takes all of us working together to get through the challenges caused by the pandemic and the amount of trash that's been generated. Today, we're also announcing changes to student meals and food sites. First, student meals. Through the combined effort of the School District of Philadelphia, charter schools, the Philadelphia Housing Authority, and Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, over 5.6 million student meals were distributed since March. In addition, hundreds of play streets and summer meal sites provided lunch and snacks to children. Tomorrow marks the last day of play streets, and I'm so grateful to the neighborhood leaders who provided safe space and free meals for our city's children all this summer. As online learning resumes next week, the School District of Philadelphia is adding 22 new student meal sites for a total of 62 locations where students or their caregivers can pick up meals for the week each Thursday from 9 a.m. to noon. However, there are changes to student eligibility. To pick up meals, family must have their child's student ID number. Students do not have to be present themselves. We are forced to make this change because the U.S. Department of Agriculture has refused to extend the waiver to the National School Lunch Program, which made it possible for any student to pick up meals from any public school, regardless of what school they attended. The waiver also made it easier for families to pick up meals at one location for all students in their household. Despite widespread and bipartisan support across the nation, the federal government continues to deny students access to this basic human need, food. We will continue our efforts and echo the School District of Philadelphia's plea for the USDA to extend the waiver before school starts next week. At the local level, I'm really proud of the way Philadelphia has come together to find solutions to food access during the pandemic. Since March, 533,000 food boxes, that's more than 4 tons of food, were distributed through the food warehouse with the help of hundreds of volunteers. I'd like to take a moment to thank the partners, staff, and volunteers who kept Philadelphia fed and made this emergency food response possible. Special thanks to the Share Food Program, Philabundance, and the 40 community-based organizations who hosted the food sites, and to city departments who contributed many hours of staff time, energy, and resources, especially Community Life Improvement Program, the CLIP program, who operated the food warehouse, and to the Office of Children and Families for centralized coordination and communication. We know that many households are still facing food insecurity. We are grateful to those who have been fighting hunger in our region for this long time, and to those who are continuing this work going forward. As we prepare for fall and aligned reopening with care, we know many Philadelphians continue to struggle putting food on their tables. As we work to recover, we remain grateful for the partnership of Philabundance and Shared Food Program, who will provide food to 31 community-based organizations who will distribute food boxes from 10 to noon every Thursday. As a reminder, there are several ways to find a food distribution site near you. Visit phila.gov/food, call 311, or call the Why Hunger hotline at 1-800-5-HUNGRY. You can also text your zip code to 1-800-548-6479 to receive a list of nearby food pantries. And finally, today I want to discuss what's been on everyone's minds this week, and that is the tragic shooting of Jacob Blake at the hands of police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. There are no words to express the pain that this incident brings to all of us, and I join with the countless others across our city and nation to express our outrage as another unarmed Black man has been gunned down at the hands of police. Even though the Justice Department has opened an investigation into this heinous act, we cannot continue to wait for the White House to take action. We must continue to advocate for change in our own cities and communities. That is why we're committed to making the change here in Philadelphia. As you know, in the wake of recent social activism, we created a steering committee to lead our pathways to reform, transformation, and reconciliation work. Just yesterday, we dedicated a new mural at the Municipal Services Building titled Crown. This art installation honors strong, brave, and selfless individuals who fight for change. Now, these powerful images of people fighting for equal rights and justice will greet those visiting the Municipal Services Building. Previously, this location drew countless protests and demonstrations, where thousands of individuals gathered to make their voices heard, express outrage, and demand change. As recent as last night, we saw people gather again to demand change right here at Dilworth Park. I want everyone to know we take this work seriously, and we are committed to making real changes, focusing on listening, understanding, and reconciliation as we go through this difficult process. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Farley for his update.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We are seeing continued progress against the coronavirus epidemic with improving signs locally, regionally, and nationally. Here are the numbers. Since this time yesterday, we identified 88 new cases of coronavirus infection in Philadelphia residents, bringing us to a total since the beginning of the epidemic of 33,343 cases. Now, that 88 represents fewer than 3% of the nearly 3,200 test results that we received today. And that 3% is a lower percentage than what we've seen in the past. And now we're getting consistently fewer than 100 cases per day reported to us. Now, with the fall in cases, we are not seeing so much the predominance of younger people that we saw a few weeks ago. Today, 42% of the cases that came to us were under the age of 40, whereas a couple of weeks ago, that was consistently greater than 50%. We have 0 new deaths to report today from yesterday. Our total since the beginning of the epidemic is 1,749. Now, our data from deaths often comes in batches. And yesterday, we learned of 13 additional deaths over the previous 2 to 3 weeks, and there's often a delay before we get the results on that. Over the first 2 weeks in August, we've averaged about 15 deaths per week, which is higher than the 8 deaths per week we had in July. And that's probably a delayed effect of the increase in cases that occurred in July. We did have an increase in cases. There's often a delay between when people have a diagnosis and when they ultimately die from this infection. We don't like the idea that the number of deaths has increased at all. However, to put that in perspective, that's still far below the peak that we saw in April when we had nearly 250 deaths per week. That's what's happening in Philadelphia, and in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, case rates are also falling. In the United States as a whole, case rates are continuing to fall. They've fallen about 20% over the past 2 weeks. Now also, the number of deaths per day is falling at the national level. All those signs are going in the right direction. A couple of words on testing. As you may have heard, the CDC recently changed its recommendations regarding testing for people exposed to COVID. And I just want to be clear, here in Philadelphia, we are not changing our recommendations, which are anyone should be tested if, number one, they have symptoms of COVID, which would be like a new onset of cough, shortness of breath, or other respiratory symptoms, or number two, they've been exposed to someone with COVID, even if they have no symptoms. Now, if people are exposed to COVID, we are recommending that they wait 7 days after the exposure to ensure that the test gives you an accurate result. Before then, you might have a false negative result. But it's particularly important for people who have been exposed to be tested. As the case rates go down, testing for those people who are exposed is even more important because we want to identify as many people with the infection as possible so that we can do contact tracing and stop the chain of transmission. Now in the city, we're doing about 3,000 tests per day. I just want to remind people that our goal is ultimately to get to 5,000 tests per day. So we want to increase testing, not decrease testing. For those people who are interested in testing, I just want to remind you that we have a great map that lets you know where you can get it done. We need to update to improve that map. It's at www.phila.gov/testing. A couple of words on contact tracing. We're still working on improving our program for that. The measures we have for the progress last week is very similar to the week before. That week we had 675 cases that came through that were referred for contact tracing. Of those, 30 were managed by other partner organizations. Of the remaining 645, 68% of those we reached, and they agreed to participate in contact tracing. 22% we were unable to reach. And of those that named contacts we were able to reach and persuade to go into quarantine, 72% of those. Then a couple words on reopening. We're still on track to what we announced last week, that effective Tuesday, September 8th, day after Labor Day, we will allow indoor dining to begin at restaurants with restrictions and theaters to begin. Now, we've had some questions about other sorts of services and other sorts of venues. I want to be clear that a restaurant can operate and provide food without entertainment, or a theater can provide entertainment but no food or drink. You can't do both. Indoor gatherings are still capped at 25 persons, and outdoor gatherings are still capped at 50 persons. Also on reopening, just want to remind people that college students are returning to Philadelphia now for those schools that are open. All the colleges in the city we worked with over the summer, they all have safety standards for what's happening on campus, and they're working with the students on preventing high-risk gatherings off campus. So far, we've had no COVID clusters in colleges, but we're going to stay in close contact with the colleges and watch this very closely. Then I want to just remind people that most respiratory viruses do get worse in the late fall and winter. So whereas all the numbers are going in the right direction right now, and we're very pleased to see that, it is quite possible that things could get worse in the future despite all the work that we're doing. I want to put everyone on notice that if that's the case, that we may have more restrictions that we put in place as the season changes. And then I want to remind people that what we're learning from our interviews with cases when we do contact tracing is that people very often know exactly how they got exposed. Almost a half knew the person that they believe exposed them, and they typically were household members or relatives or friends that they got together with in social gatherings. So the message for people is if you get together with people outside your household, even if it's your relatives and friends, wear a mask. That's a high-risk situation. More information on all this is on our website, www.phila.gov/COVID. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. We are now going to move to Armando, who will deliver the Spanish language translation of both the mayor and Dr. Farley's remarks.
Palabras del alcalde Jim Kenney para el jueves 27 de agosto del 2020. Buenas tardes. Hoy quiero comenzar con una actualización sobre la situación de la basura y el reciclaje. Sé que han sido unas semanas difíciles para nuestros trabajadores y nuestros residentes. Gracias a las medidas que hemos puesto en marcha, estamos retomando el rumbo paulatinamente. Actualmente tenemos un día de retraso en toda la ciudad y en algunos vecindarios estamos ya completamente al día. Continuaremos trabajando durante el fin de semana y esperamos volver a los horarios normales para la próxima semana. Por favor, continúe colocando la basura y el reciclaje en su día habitual. El Departamento de Calles continúa avanzando en la contratación de trabajadores temporales para aliviar sus problemas de personal. Por ahora, hemos contratado 55 nuevos trabajadores y otros 22 están listos para comenzar esta semana. También quiero agradecerles a los empleados de otros departamentos que han estado trabajando en saneamiento para ayudarnos a superar nuestro atraso. Realmente es necesario que todos trabajemos juntos para superar los desafíos que está causando esta pandemia. Asimismo, hoy también anunciamos cambios en los tipos de comidas y los sitios de comidas para estudiantes. Primero, comenzaré con las comidas para los estudiantes. Gracias a los esfuerzos conjuntos del Distrito Escolar de Filadelfia, las escuelas autónomas, la Autoridad de Vivienda de Filadelfia y la de Parques y Recreación de la ciudad, se distribuyeron más de 5,6 millones de comidas para estudiantes desde marzo. Además, cientos de Play Streets y cientos de comidas de verano les proporcionaron almuerzos y refrigerios a los niños. Mañana será el último día de Play Streets y estoy muy agradecido con los líderes de los vecindarios que brindaron un espacio seguro y ayudaron a distribuir alimentos gratuitos para los niños de nuestra ciudad este verano. A medida que se reanude el aprendizaje en línea la próxima semana, el Distrito Escolar de Filadelfia agregará 22 nuevos sitios de comidas para estudiantes con un total de 62 ubicaciones donde los estudiantes o sus representantes pueden recoger las comidas para la semana todos los días jueves desde las 9 de la mañana al mediodía. Sin embargo, hay cambios en la elegibilidad de los estudiantes. Para recoger las comidas, las familias deben proporcionar el número de identificación de estudiante de su hijo. Los estudiantes mismos no necesitan estar presentes. Nos vemos obligados a hacer este cambio porque el Departamento de Agricultura de los Estados Unidos se ha negado a extender la exención al Programa Nacional de Almuerzos Escolares, que hacía posible que cualquier estudiante tuviera acceso a los alimentos sin importar a qué escuela asistía. La exención también facilitó que las familias pudieran recoger las comidas en un solo lugar para todos los estudiantes en su hogar. A pesar del apoyo generalizado y bipartidista de todo el país, el gobierno federal continúa negándoles a los estudiantes el acceso a esta necesidad humana básica. Nosotros continuaremos nuestros esfuerzos y nos haremos eco de la petición del Distrito Escolar de Filadelfia para que el Departamento de Agricultura de los Estados Unidos extienda la exención antes de que comiencen las clases la próxima semana. A nivel local, estoy muy orgulloso de la forma en que Filadelfia se ha unido para encontrar soluciones al acceso de los alimentos durante la pandemia. Desde marzo se distribuyeron 533.318 cajas de alimentos, es decir, más de 4 toneladas de alimentos a través del almacén de alimentos con la ayuda de cientos de voluntarios. Me gustaría tomar un momento para agradecerles a los aliados de la ciudad, al personal y a los voluntarios que hicieron posible esta respuesta alimentaria de emergencia para mantener alimentados a nuestros residentes. Un agradecimiento en especial va para el programa Share Food, Feel Abundance y para las 40 organizaciones comunitarias que albergaron los sitios de comida. Muchas gracias. Y a los departamentos de la ciudad que contribuyeron con muchas horas de su tiempo, energía y recursos de su personal, especialmente al programa de mejora de la vida comunitaria que operó el almacén de alimentos y a la Oficina de Niños y Familias por la coordinación y comunicación centralizada. Gracias también. Sabemos que muchos hogares aún enfrentan inseguridad alimentaria. Agradecemos a quienes han estado luchando contra el hambre en nuestra región durante mucho tiempo y a quienes continúan con este trabajo hacia el futuro. Mientras nos preparamos para el otoño y alineamos la reapertura con cuidado, sabemos que muchos habitantes de Filadelfia continúan luchando para poner comida en la mesa. Mientras trabajamos para recuperarnos, sigo agradecido por la Asociación de Feel Abundance y Share Food, que proporcionará alimentos a 31 organizaciones comunitarias que distribuirán cajas de alimento desde las 10 de la mañana al mediodía todos los días jueves. Como recordatorio, hay varias formas de encontrar un sitio de distribución de alimentos cerca de usted. Usted puede visitar el sitio web phila.gov/food. Puede llamar al 311 o puede llamar a la línea directa de White Hunger al 1-800-5-HUNGRY, es decir, 1-800-5-HUNGRY. También puede enviar un mensaje de texto con su código postal al 1-800-548-6479 para recibir una lista de las despensas de alimentos cercanas. Finalmente, hoy quiero discutir lo que ha estado en la mente de todos esta semana, y es el trágico tiroteo de Jacob Blake a manos de la policía en Kenosha, Wisconsin. No hay palabras para expresar el dolor que me genera este incidente, y me uno a los cientos de personas en nuestra ciudad y en la nación para expresar nuestra indignación porque otro hombre negro ha sido víctima de la brutalidad policial. Aunque el Departamento de Justicia ha abierto una investigación sobre este atroz acto, no podemos seguir esperando que la Casa Blanca actúe. Debemos seguir abogando por el cambio en nuestras propias ciudades y en nuestras comunidades. Es por eso que estoy comprometido a hacer este cambio aquí, en Filadelfia. Como sabrán, a raíz del reciente activismo social, creamos un comité directivo para liderar nuestros caminos hacia el trabajo de reforma, transformación y reconciliación. Ayer mismo inauguramos un nuevo mural en el edificio de servicios municipales titulado Corona. Esta instalación artística rinde homenaje a las personas fuertes, valientes y desinteresadas que luchan día a día por el cambio. Ahora, estas poderosas imágenes de personas que luchan por la igualdad de derechos y la justicia recibirán a quienes visiten el edificio de servicios municipales. Anteriormente, este lugar generó innumerables protestas y manifestaciones. Miles de personas se reunieron allí para hacer oír su voz, para expresar su indignación y para exigir cambios. Y tan recientemente como anoche, vimos a la gente reunirse nuevamente para exigir un cambio aquí mismo, en Dilworth Park. Quiero que todos sepan que nos tomamos este trabajo en serio y que estamos comprometidos a realizar cambios reales, enfocándonos en escuchar, comprender y en reconciliarnos a medida que avanzamos con este proceso. Y esta es la actualización en materia de salud para el día jueves 27 de agosto del 2020. Comenzamos el día de hoy con buenas noticias. Ha habido un gran progreso local, regional y nacionalmente. El día de hoy reportamos 88 nuevos casos con un total de 33.343 casos reportados en total. Esta cifra representa menos del 3% de los casos positivos de los 3.200 resultados que recibimos hoy. Los casos se han mantenido en menos de 100 casos diarios consistentemente. Con la disminución de los casos no hemos visto mayor incremento en las poblaciones jóvenes. El 42% de los resultados recibidos pertenecen a menores de 40 años, mientras que en semanas anteriores se mantenían repetidamente por encima del 50%. El día de hoy no reportamos muertes por la COVID-19. En total, 1.749 personas han fallecido en Filadelfia a consecuencia de este virus. Ayer conocimos sobre 13 muertes de 2 o 3 semanas previas. En las 2 primeras semanas de agosto anunciamos menos de 15 muertes semanales. Esto representó un ligero incremento si lo comparamos con el promedio de 8 muertes semanales en julio. Probablemente esto se deba al efecto retrasado del repunte de la pandemia que tuvimos a fines de julio. Estamos bien lejos del pico de 250 muertes semanales que teníamos en abril, sin embargo. En Pensilvania y en New Jersey los casos van disminuyendo. En los Estados Unidos en su totalidad, los casos están disminuyendo en un 20% en los últimos 14 días y las muertes diarias también están disminuyendo. Sobre las pruebas, los Centros de Control de Enfermedades cambiaron sus recomendaciones con respecto a las pruebas para personas expuestas al COVID. Nosotros no cambiaremos nuestras recomendaciones que deben observarse si es que usted experimenta síntomas del COVID, tiene tos, dificultad para respirar y otros síntomas respiratorios. O si usted estuvo expuesto a alguien que tuvo el COVID-19, incluso si no presenta síntomas. Debe esperar 7 días después de la exposición para garantizar la precisión de la prueba. A medida que bajan las tasas de casos, evaluar a la gente expuesta es aún más importante. Y actualmente estamos haciendo 3.000 pruebas por día, aunque nuestra meta es hacer 5.000 pruebas por día. Sobre el rastreo de contagios. Las medidas proporcionadas la semana pasada son similares a la de la semana anterior. 675 casos fueron contactados, de los cuales 30 fueron gestionados por nuestros socios. De los 645 restantes, un 68% de los contactados aceptó participar. Un 3% no tenían teléfono para ser contactados. Un 22% no pudo ser contactado. Un 4% se negó a participar y un 2% no entendió el proceso. De los contactos nombrados, el 72% pudo ser entrevistado y estuvo de acuerdo con guardar la cuarentena voluntaria. Estamos trabajando hacia nuestra reapertura. Esta será efectiva el martes 8 de septiembre, un día después del Día del Trabajo. Comenzará de nuevo el servicio de comidas en los interiores de restaurantes con restricciones. Habrá actividad en los teatros. Entre las restricciones continuas contamos con que ningún club nocturno, conferencia o convenciones o reuniones en los centros para personas mayores será autorizado. Las reuniones en interiores todavía quedan limitadas a 25 personas y las reuniones al aire libre hasta 50 personas. Para los estudiantes universitarios que regresan a clases, las universidades tienen estándares de seguridad en sus campus. Nosotros estamos trabajando con los estudiantes para prevenir las reuniones de alto riesgo fuera de los campus. Hasta ahora, no hay grupos o casos reportados con COVID en las universidades. Nosotros continuaremos monitoreando de cerca todas estas variables. Es importante destacar que la mayoría de los virus respiratorios empeoran a fines de otoño y durante el invierno. Les avisamos a todos que pueden haber más restricciones si vemos que las tasas de cambio de casos comienzan a aumentar a medida que cambian las estaciones. Me gustaría recordar lo que estamos aprendiendo de las entrevistas sobre la propagación del virus. Un 48% supo cómo se contagió. La mayoría de los contagios fueron por miembros del hogar y familiares, en reuniones sociales con amigos en grupos pequeños. La lección aprendida es que las personas en las que más confía uno son aquellas de las cuales es más probable que usted contraiga la infección. Usted debe confiar en general en su familia, pero no en tiempos del COVID-19. Por favor, utilice una máscara cuando esté cerca de sus parientes y amigos fuera del hogar, porque juntos podemos ganarle al COVID-19. Así que, por favor, use su máscara. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Armando. We will now move to our Q&A portion for members of the media. As usual, we will start with questions on topics related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So if your hand is raised for another topic now, you can lower that and we will get to that in the second round. Please remember, we do have limited time during these briefings, so only one representative from each media outlet is permitted to ask questions, and reporters are asked to limit their questions to 3 or fewer. For those logged in today, please use the raise your hand feature. It can be found under the participants list. We also ask that you use video to ask your question if you are able to for broadcasting purposes. We will now unmute reporters one by one to ask their questions, starting with Mike D'Onofrio of the Tribune.
Hey, thanks. So, Dr. Farley, when you say you're putting people on notice that restrictions could be put back in place in the fall if the situation changes, but have you ruled out, or has the administration ruled out, like the full lockdown measures that were imposed earlier during the pandemic?
I wouldn't rule out anything. We really don't know what this virus is going to do when we get to the late fall and winter. It's such a new virus that it would really be the first winter it's seen in the United States. We certainly wouldn't want to go to a full lockdown, but anything is possible.
Right. And when do you think a potential third wave could arrive? Is it just the advent of colder weather or any other conditions?
Yeah, so when the weather gets cold, it makes it the air is dry, and in dry air, it's easier for these respiratory droplets to linger and to transmit from one person to another. I can tell you that other respiratory viruses start to increase in September, and that they peak around January and February. So we could see the effect of this on this virus at any time or not at all.
And then I think this is COVID related. Can I ask a question about the food, the grab and go meals? Is that kosher?
Sure.
All right. So the requirement for parents to have student ID numbers. Mayor Kenny, anybody, do you think this is going to just lead to fewer students getting or accessing meals?
It possibly could, and we're going to do our best to make sure it doesn't happen. The United States Department of Agriculture is the problem here. All they had to do is extend the waiver, and we be doing as effective as we can. We're going to continue to lobby them, both USDA. It's a bipartisan issue. Both sides, no one argues with it that the waiver should be extended. It's just one of those things that this government does to make life harder for people.
And just, is there any hope of the waiver being reinstituted, or is it just totally off the table, or are you just unsure?
No, we're still at it, and we're hoping that we can get it reinstituted or extended before school begins again.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to go now to Argenis Figueroa of Univision.
Buenas tardes. Armando, voy a necesitar de tu ayuda.
Buenas tardes.
¿Cómo están? Armando, mi pregunta es para el doctor Farley. Quisiéramos saber si sabe cómo va el proceso del rastreo de contactos en hispanos y el acceso a pruebas de COVID-19. ¿Cómo está todo ese proceso? Tanto de acceso a pruebas como de rastreo de contactos en hispanos.
The question is for Dr. Farley. Dr. Farley, the question is, we would like to know how the process of tracing contacts and access to testing is working out for Hispanics.
So we are trying to increase access to testing. With that Hispanic group is the one population that we feel has not had enough testing. And so we are providing funding to organizations that provide testing sites, and we're directing more of them in the areas of the community, areas of the city where we have more Hispanic populations. As far as contact tracing goes, we have 5 separate teams. One entire team is a Spanish-speaking team so that they can deal very comfortably with people who are Spanish-speaking.
Estamos tratando de incrementar el acceso, sobre todo a las pruebas, porque pensamos que la comunidad hispana no ha tenido suficiente participación en este proceso, y estamos proporcionando fondos a organizaciones comunitarias, sobre todo para que puedan poner lugares disponibles para las pruebas. Hay áreas de la ciudad que tienen concentración mayor de hispanos y en esas nos estamos enfocando. Tenemos 5 equipos por separado y uno de ellos constituido exclusivamente para hispanohablantes para poder tratar de saltar esta brecha y lograr que los hispanos tengan acceso a las pruebas y también se pueda hacer el trazo, la búsqueda de los contactos.
Okay. Mi segunda pregunta es para el alcalde Kenny. Hay, digamos, todavía algunos hispanos en necesidad de acceder a alimentos que están preocupados porque cada vez más hay menos lugares para ellos recoger despensas. Yo quisiera saber si el alcalde tiene alguna fecha de repente probable en esto de la distribución de alimentos. Ahora sabemos que es un día a la semana. Entonces, ¿tienen alguna fecha prevista para finalizar esto o eso es lo que quisiéramos saber? Si tiene alguna fecha a tope.
Si hay una fecha en la cual se va a detener el servicio.
El servicio, exacto. Dado que muchas comunidades están preocupadas.
The question is for Mayor Kenny. Mayor Kenny, in regards to the needs that Hispanics have for food distribution, they are concerned because there have been less places available before where they could pick up or collect food. And they're wondering if there's a date where this service is going to be discontinued. Right now, it's being done once a week, but the concern is there's going to be a date that you foresee in which this food distribution effort is going to stop.
I don't see a date for certain that this will stop. We're down to 1 day for lots of reasons, and 1 day is manageable. And unless we run out of food, I don't see it stopping unless someone on here from managing director's office has other information that I don't have. But that's the reason we went to 1 day, because it would be easier to operate.
No vemos una fecha en la cual se detenga este servicio de distribución de comidas. Hemos pasado a hacerlo una vez por semana por muchos motivos, de orden logístico principalmente. A menos que nos quedemos sin comida, no veo que este servicio se detenga, aunque estamos de acuerdo a las directrices que nos dé la administración de la municipalidad, pero por el momento vamos a continuar y no vemos una fecha en la cual acabe este servicio. Gracias.
Ok, muchas gracias a ustedes.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't know if Eva or Tumar had anything to add.
Yeah, I think the mayor was correct, Kelly. It's just that we moved the operations over to 2 providers, and that's why the sort of distribution days went down. But we don't anticipate distributing less food.
Okay, great. All right, we are going to go to Dania Henninger with Billy Penn.
Hi. On the school pickup sites, so I guess for Mayor Kenny, I just want to clarify on the student ID. Can they still go to any site, or is it a specific site that matches an ID?
I'm not sure. I think that Eva may know. Eva, did they have to go to their own school?
I don't.
Go ahead, Ava. I'm sorry.
I don't believe they have to go to their own school, but they have to have the ID.
Okay, because it's some charter schools too, so they could go to whatever's closest. You know,
We could find out definitively for you, but I don't think it matters. I think the prior program, iteration of the program, people are allowed to pick up for a number of kids in the house. They were allowed to pick up for a neighbor. That's all going because of the USDA waiver issue. But I believe, and we'll confirm it for you, that you can go to any school as long as you have the ID.
Sure.
And if I could just add for a minute, there are 5 charters, I won't be able to name them on this call, that actually receive meals through the school district, and they will be subject to the same rules as the school district in terms of the requirement for IDs. But this will all be available. This information will be available on our website, phila.gov/food.
Cool. Yeah, I was just there trying to find the answer and couldn't find it, so I asked. Then I just wanted to circle back with Dr. Farley on these masks that are cool, but not very, thick. Like they're you can see light through them and everything. And I know you said earlier via email that you didn't expect very many people to use them, but I'm kind of wondering, like, should we just consider them a souvenir? Like if I go out, I have a couple that I was going to give to people, but should I not give them to people?
No, I'm not sure which one you have, and I'm not sure if they vary, but the one that I have is a 2-ply. And so I feel like it's dense enough that this would be adequate. If it stays on, it needs to have a good seal around the nose and under the chin. If yours is different, let me know, but all the ones that I've seen now are 2-ply.
It is 2-ply, but like one of the days you said, if you can hold it up to the light and you can see your hand through it, like which you definitely can with these. Yeah, no, I mean, to be clear, that test wasn't just could you see anything through it, but really, if you look at say a mesh, some of the mesh gaiters, which is what that study raised questions about, you can actually see holes in the fabric and see the fibers between them. And mine, I can't see that. So Okay.
If yours is different, let me know.
Well, it's a nice souvenir either way. So thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. This is our last call for questions, folks. All right, we will go to Laura McChrystal of the Inquirer.
Hi, can I ask a couple questions not directly COVID related?
Sure.
Okay. First, any update we can get on plans to clear the encampments?
We're still working on that now. We're still trying to get people out in safe shelter, and we don't have any more update other than that for today. Eva, do you have anything?
Yes, I would just like to add that we have housed, I think, over 109 people, provide other services to another dozen or more. We're out there every day, our staff. And just for people to be aware, we have spent countless hours talking to camp organizers and residents of the camp and have made a significant number of efforts to address their demands, which the mayor has previously said. We all agree that we need more affordable housing, particularly for people who are very low income. And we have made a number of offers and we'll begin to act on them. Just in this coming year, we expect that we might be able to create about 1,400 new long-term housing units for people who are homeless or near homeless. So we believe we've really met the protest camp more than halfway in terms of listening to their concerns, understanding their concerns, and taking the actions we could. And we just encourage individuals who are there to access the services and housing that we're offering, and we will continue to work with them on the longer term goals.
Okay, thank you. And I also have a couple questions for Mayor Kenny. With news that the Sixers are lobbying to be able to redevelop the Penn's Landing area with a new arena and other development there, would you be supportive of offering them the tax breaks that they would be seeking for that?
DRWC has an ongoing RFP process. They're in the midst of it now and coming, I think, close to an end. They have done all the due diligence on all the proposals. They will make a recommendation, and we'll see what that recommendation is. But I do not involve myself directly in that process. I don't think it's appropriate to do that. And I'm waiting for, and really to kind of talk about specifics of individual respondents' offers or respondents' ideas prior to the process being concluded would not be appropriate either. So I'm not going to have any comment until DRWC, the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, comes up with its recommendation.
Okay. Would you have any concerns that the Sixers proposal,
I'm not going to specifically talk about items in individual respondents' proposals. It wouldn't be appropriate because the process is ongoing.
Could I ask it this way? Would you be open to a proposal that would sort of redevelop that entire Penn's Landing area and not necessarily leave the largest chunk in the middle for the park as planned?
That's too nebulous for me to I'm just not going to have any comment. The process has been ongoing. It's been a process that politics has stayed out of, including myself, and there will be a recommendation, and that recommendation will be considered, and will we move forward or not?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Laura. We're going to go now to Mike D'Onofrio with the Tribune.
Hey, thanks. So has the administration ruled out informing protesters whatever they end up doing the same way you did last time by just posting a notice early in the morning, or do you think that you'll give them some sort of more formal notice?
There's been formal notice given twice, and the protesters' lawyer took us into federal court looking for an injunction. The judge did not issue the injunction and said we were permitted to move forward. And we will try to figure out operationally how to do that. But in the meantime, continue to try to get people out of the encampment and into safe shelter. And
then just to be sure, so has the clock started on the 72 hours?
We have not posted yet based on the judge's opinion.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it basically carried over. All right, and maybe, and then just what do you say to residents who are looking for the administration to provide an immediate solution to the encampments in their neighborhood?
There are no immediate solutions to homelessness and poverty, and we're doing our best to accommodate folks in need while at the same time bringing this to an end amicably.
All right, that's all I got.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to move now to Manny Smith of CBS 3.
Mayor Kenny, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One quick question for you. I'm sure you heard about the terrible accident in West Philly. A car crashed into a house.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Any reaction to neighbors who say speeding cars in that particular neighborhood have been a problem?
Speeding cars are a problem generally. I have not have specific complaints. I'm sure there were some lodged. We'll try to figure out, once we get more information on the details, we'll try to address it the best we can. But a lot of the stuff that people have to deal with in our communities, and this is a tragic loss of life, is done by people who are selfish and self-centered, don't follow any rules, whether it's speeding cars or not allowing people to cross the intersections or dumping trash where it should be dumped. I mean, all these things add up to problems we have to address, which is time and money taken away from issues that education and housing that we really need to improve. So we'll get a more bigger picture on what happened here and try to figure out how to address it from a police and or streets department process.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate these opportunities when we can ask questions and get our homework done with you. I know you don't want to talk so much about Penn's Landing, but help me out just as a reporter. I know back in, 2018, you had a budget that had $90 million toward parking, toward capping Penn's Landing, right, and reconnecting Old City. What happened with that? What was your concept around that? What's your hopes for that project going into?
It's still ongoing. The engineering and design is I think, coming close to completion, and we'll get a report soon on when construction might begin.
Okay, on that, okay. And just, Sixers fan to Sixers fan, if I were, in a couple of years, if I was like, hey, you want to meet me down at Penn's Landing for a Sixers game, would you meet me? Would you go?
Well, I mean, again, this is an ongoing RFP process, and, I've taken great pains and great pride in staying out of these kinds of considerations without weighing in myself or putting a thumb on the scale for any particular developer or in any particular development proposal process. I trust DRWC and their process to come up with the best recommendation, and we'll see what that is. But again, I don't think it's appropriate for me to be commenting on active RFPs that are in consideration.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manny. We're going to go now to Martin Pratt of Philly or Black News.
Yes, this question is for the mayor. With the increased gun violence and the randomness of all these acts, has there been any thought to coming up with some type of solution to that citizens can anonymously give tips and can get more involved? I know on social media there has been a few people that have tried to do anonymous tips and actually pay people for tips. And as I saw that, I was thinking, well, what is the city thinking about doing to prevent?
We will accept anonymous tips from anybody who can tell us about someone who has been a shooter or an incident that may be coming up relative to their knowledge of two people who are feuding and may wind up, posing off against each other with guns. We take as much information as the public is willing to give us. The important thing is that the police are really out there working hard. We've taken 178 guns off the street in the last month, and they're replaced almost instantaneously. You can't have a discussion about the reduction of violence and shootings and death until you have a serious discussion about gun control. And I know, certain folks don't want to talk about gun control. How do people get these guns? Why do they get these guns? We had one situation recently in the last couple of weeks where there were shell casings from an AR-15. Why should an AR-15 be in public circulation in any way, shape, or form? The only people who should have access to those weapons is the military, period. We can't control guns in our own city. We can't put laws in effect because the state won't let us. Trump thinks the Second Amendment's more important than any amendment. And we're kind of stuck in the middle of this. and our citizens and our kids are suffering because it's a gun crazy country and they're not willing to step back. I remember speaking to a mayor of Quebec City a couple of years ago, and he was complaining about the increase in his homicide rate. I said, how many? He said 4. None were with a gun. So, I mean, if you want a safe society, get the guns out of people's hands and have the manufacturers be somewhat responsible for the effect of the product that they're making. Product liability exists in almost every manufacturing situation in our country, but not with guns. So, I'm frustrated, disgusted, aggravated, angry, and want to see this end. But our police are doing whatever they can to get these guns off the street. We're monitoring social media. We're trying to get between people who are feuding. We're trying to get our group violence initiative off the ground in a pandemic where you really can't, interact with people the way you're used to interacting with people because of the disease. So we've been hamstrung in many ways. I don't like the numbers either. And as I said before, one homicide is one homicide too many, and we have way too many. And we're doing our best every day to address it. But getting help from no other government and no other way to regulate what goes on in our city when it comes to guns.
Thank you. A second question is about education. And what is the contact information? You may not know this, somebody in your staff may know. Contact information for parents who are just realizing that they won't have Wi-Fi next month because their unemployment's run out. And so who would they call? They call the school board directly, or they call...
Eva, do you know?
Yes,
Hey,
sorry, I
Mark.
was on mute. They can call 211, and 211 will help them assist in terms of access centers versus internet and various intermediaries who could help them with Wi-Fi.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Martin. We're going to go back to Manny Smith.
One more question, actually, and it was kind of picking up off of Martin's questions. If there was just an update on the access centers in general. I know you guys opened registration on Tuesday. How many people have registered? And is there any more guidance available as to how you guys will be selecting families and when they get informed?
I don't have those numbers.
Annie, we could get back to
We're
you.
gonna have
with
to get
those
back to you because
numbers.
I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay, for video purposes, though, just that number, I can get that later. If you can just say, hey, if you want to give us an update, we've been doing keeping our viewers informed that they can register. Is there any other advice about when parents will know when, or how you're doing that selection process? We try to update them as often as we can.
All right, we'll get back to you as soon as we're off.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, that will conclude our briefing today, and we will be back next week. Thank you.